Gulliver's Travels by Jonathan Swift. Chapter 6. A continuation of the state of England. The characters First Minister. My master was wholly yet at loss to understand what motives could incite this race of lawyers to perplex and disquiet and weary themselves and engage in a confederacy of injustice, merely for the sake of injuring their fellow animals. Neither could he comprehend what I meant when in saying they did it for hire. Whereupon I was at much pain to describe him the use of money, and the materials it was made of, and the value of metals. That when a Yahoo got a great store of this precious substance, he was able to purchase whatever he had mind to finest clothing, the noblest houses, great tract of island, and most costly meats and drinks, and have his choice of the most beautiful females. Therefore, since money alone was able to perform all these feats, our Yahoos thought they could never have enough of it to spend or save, as they found themselves inclined from a natural bent, either to profusion or avarice, that a rich man enjoyed the fruit of a poor man's labor, and the latter were 1,000 to 1 in proportion to the former, that the bulk of our people were forced to live miserably, in laboring every day for small wages to make a few lives plentifully. I enlarged myself much on these and many other particulars to the same purpose, but his honour was still trying to seek, for he went on still to seek, for he went upon a supposition that all animals had a title to their share in production of the earth, and especially those who were presided over the rest, and he desired I would let him I would let him know what these costly meats were, and how any of us happened to want them. Whereupon I enumerated as many sorts as came to my head, with many various methods of dressing them, which could not be done without sending vessels by sea to every part of the world, as well for liquors to drink, as for sauces, and innumerable other conveniencies. I assured him that this whole globe of earth must be 3 times gone round before one of our better female Yahoos could get our breakfast, or a cup to put it in. He said that this must needs to be a miserable country where it cannot furnish food for its own inhabitants. But what he chiefly wondered was how this vast tract of ground I described could be wholly without fresh water, and people put it to necessity of sending of the sea for drink. I replied that England, the dear place of my nativity, was computed to produce 3 times the quantity of food, more than its inhabitants are able to consume, as well as liquors extracted from grain, or pressed out from the fruit of certain trees, which made excellent drink, in the same proportion in every other convenience of life. But in order to feed the luxury and impertinence of males, the vanity of females, we sent away the greatest part of our necessary things to other country, from whence in return we brought the materials for disease, folly, and vice, to spend amongst ourselves. Hence it follows of necessity that the vast numbers of our people are compelled to seek their livelihood begging, robbing, stealing, cheating, pimping, forswearing, flattering, severing, forring, poisoning, worrying, canting, libelling, freethinking, and the like occupations, every one of which term I was at much pain to make him understand. That wine was not important among us for foreign countries, to supply the want of water or other drinks, because it was a sort of liquid which made us merry, in putting us out of our senses, diverting all melancholy thoughts, begat wild extravagant imaginations in the brain, raised our hopes, and banished our fears. suspended every office of reason for a time, and deprives us the use of our limbs, till we fell into a profound sleep. Although it must be confessed that we always awake sick and dispirited, that the use of liquor filled us with diseases that made our lives uncomfortable and short. But beside all this, the bulk of our people supported themselves by furnishing the necessities or conveniences of life to the rich and to each other. For instance, when I am home and dressed as ought to be, I carry on my body the workmen of 100 tradesmen. Building and furniture of my house employed as many more and 5 times the number to adorn my wife. I was going on to tell him another source of people who get their livelihood by attending the sick, and having upon some occasion in his former honour that many of my crew had died of disease. But here it was, with the utmost difficulty, I brought him to apprehend what I meant. He could easily conceive that a Hunimnim grew weak and heavy for a few days before his death, or by some accident might hurt a limb, but that Nature, who works all things to perfection, should suffer any pains to breed our bodies. He thought it impossible, and desired to know the reason of so unaccountable an evil. I told him we fed on 1,000 things which operated contrary to each other, that we eat when we are not hungry, and drank without provocation of thirst, and we sate the whole night, drinking strong liquors without eating a bit, which disposed us to sloth, inflamed our bodies, and participated or prevented digestion. That prostitute female yahoos are required a certain malady, which bred rottenness in the bone of those who fell into her embraces, that this and many other diseases were propagated from father to son, so that great numbers come into the world with complicated maladies upon them, that it would be an endless to give him a catalogue of all the disease incidents to human bodies, for they would not be fewer than 5 or 6 hundred spread over every limb and joint. In short, every part, external and intestine, having diseases appropriate to them, to remedy which there was a sort of people bred among us in the profession of curing the sick. Because I had some skill in the faculty, I would, in gratitude to my honour, let him know the whole mystery in by method which there proceed. Their fundamental is that all diseases arise from repletion, from whence they conclude that the great evacuation of the body is necessary, either through the natural passage or upwards at the mouth. The next business is from herbs, minerals, gums, oils, shells, salts, juices, seaweed, excrement, bark of trees, serpent, toad, frog, spider, dead men's flesh and bones, birds, beasts, and fish, to form a composition for the smell and taste of the most abominable and nauseous and detestable they can possibly contrive, which the stomach immediately rejects the loathing, as this they call vomit, or else from the same storehouse, with some other poisonous additions, they command us to take it in the office above or below, just as the physician then happens to be disposed. A medicine equally annoying and disgustful to the bowels, which relaxing the belly, drives down all before it. They call this a purge or gleister. For nature, as the physicians allege, having intended by the superior interior orifice only for the intromission of solids and liquids, the inferior posterior for ejection, these artists ingenuously considering that in all diseases natures is forced out of her seat, and therefore replaced her in it. The body must be treated with a manner directly contrary, by interchanging the use of the orifice, forcing solids, and liquids in at the anus, and making evacuations at the mouth. But, besides real diseases, we are subject that there are only imaginary, for which physicians had invented imaginary cures. These have several names, and so have the drugs are proper to them. With these our female Yahoos are always infested. One great excellency of this tribe is their prognostics, which they seldom fail their predictions in real diseases when they rise to a degree of malignity, generally portending death. And this is always in their power, recovering is not. And therefore, upon any unexpected signs of amendment, they have pronounced their sentence. Rather being accused as a false prophets, they know how to approve their sagacity to the world by a seasonable dose. They are, likewise, of special use to husbands and wives, and they grow weary of their mates, to eldest sons, to great ministers of state, and often to princes. I had formerly, upon occasion, discoursed with my master upon the nature of government in general, and particularly on our excellent constitution, deserve the wonder and envy of the whole world. But having there accidentally mentioned a minister of state, he commanded me some time after to inform him what species of Yahoo I particularly meant by that appellation. I told him that first or chief minister of state, who was the person I intended to describe, was a creature wholly exempt from joy and grief, love and hatred, pity and anger, and at least made use of no other passion but then a violent desire for wealth, power, and titles. That he applies his words to all uses, except to the indication of his mind. That he never tells a truth, but with intent that you should take it for a lie, nor a lie, but with a design that you should take it for a truth. That who these speaks are worse behind their back, are on the surest way to preferment, when he begins to praise you to others and yourself. You are from that day forlorn, and the worst mark you can receive is a promise, especially when it is confirmed that an oath which every wise man retires, giving gives over all hopes. There are three methods by which a man may rise to be chief minister. First is to know imprudence to dispose of a wife, a daughter, or a sister. The second, by betraying or undetermining his procedure. The third is, by a furious zeal, is public assemblies against the corruptions of court. But a wise prince would rather choose to employ those whose practice is the last of these methods, because such zealots always prove the most obsequious and subservient to the will and passions of their manner, that these ministers, having always employed at their disposal, preserve them into a power by bribing a majority of the Senate or Great Council, and that at last, by an expedient called Act of Indemnity, whereof I described the nature to him, secured themselves after reckonings, and retired from the public, laden with the spoils of the nation. The palace of a chief minister thus is a seminary to breed up others in his own trades, the pages, lacqueys, porters, and imitating their master, to become minister of state in their several districts, and learn to excel in the principal ingredients, insolence, lying, and bribery. According they have a subaltern court paid to them by person of the best rank, sometimes by the force of dexterity and impertinence, arrived through several gradations to be successors of their lord. He is usually governed by a decaying wench or favourite foolman, who are the tunnels through which all grace are conveyed, may properly be called their last resort, governors of the kingdom. One day is the discourse of my master, having heard the nobility of my country, was pleased to make me a compliment which I could not pretend to deserve, that he was sure I must have been born of some noble family, because I was far exceeding in shape and color and cleanliness all Yahoos of his nation, although imputed to my different way of living from those brutes. And besides, I was not only endowed with the faculty of speech, but likewise some rudiments of reason, to a degree that all his acquaintance I passed for a prodigy. He made me observe that among the Houyhnhnms, that a while a sorrel and an iron grey, which were not so exactly shaped as the bay, a dapple grey and a black, were not born with equal talents of mind, or a capacity to improve them, and therefore always in the condition of servants without aspiring to match out of their race, and that the country would be reckoned monstrous and unnatural. I made his honour my most humble acknowledgments for the good opinion he was pleased to conceive me, but I assured him at the same time my birth was of the lower sort, that having been born of the plainest honest parents, who were just able to give me a tolerable education, that nobility is among us was altogether a different thing from the idea he had of it, that our young noblemen are bred from their childhood in idleness and luxury, that as soon as their years will permit, they consume their vigour, and contract odious diseases from among lewd females. When their fortunes are almost ruined, they marry some woman of mean birth, disagreeable person, and unsound constitution, merely for the sake of money, whom they hate and despise. That the production of marriages is generally scrofulous, rickety, of deformed children, by which the means of family seldom continues above 3 generations, unless the wife takes care to provide a healthy fodder among her neighbors or domestics, in order to improve and continue the breed, that the weak, diseased body and a meagre countenance and sallow complexion are the true marks of noble blood, and a healthy, robust appearance is so disgraceful in a man of quality that the world concludes his real father to be have a groom or a coachman. Imperfections of the mind run parallel with those of his body, and composition of spleen, dullness, ignorance, caprice, sensuality, and pride. Without the consent of this illustrious body, no law can be made, repealed, or altered, and these have the decision of all our possessions without appeal.